Sten Wallstrom is keeping his cards close to his chest early on, still yet to put a time on the board with nearly an hour left. Jimmy Lindo puts down a marker early, sitting at the top of the sheets with a 29.7.
Nice clean start for him. He's not overdriving the car yet, just finding where the grip is while the track's still green. Robertson slots into P2, but that's nearly a full second adrift of the pace Lindo has set already.
Chabo pops into third, but that lap time is more of a Sunday drive than a qualifying run.
He's clearly just scrubbing in a set of tires and getting his eye in. No point burning through the rubber this early in the session.
Robertson's holding steady in second for now, though there's still plenty of time for him to whittle down that gap to the top.
Lindo is sitting pretty in P1, but he won't be resting on that time, with the track surface improving every minute.
Robertson is still parked in P2, but he's got to be looking at Lindo's times and wondering where that extra second is hiding. Chabo stays in third, though that 3-minute-plus lap suggests he's more interested in the data than the leaderboard right now.
He might be checking the car for any gremlins or just giving the engineers a chance to look at the telemetry after an installation lap.
Robertson's holding it steady in second, but that gap to the top is still yawning open at nearly a full second.
He's likely working through a specific setup program. This deep into practice, you're not always chasing the headline time. You're looking for a balance that doesn't eat the tires.
Lindo is still the reference point out there, sitting comfortably at the top while the others try to find their rhythm. Robertson is still holding down P2, but that gap to Lindo is looking like a mountain he hasn't started climbing yet. Wallstrom finally joins the party, slotting into third with a 133.5. Lindo isn't sitting still, he's just found another couple of tenths to drop into the mid-29s. Nigel Walters is taking his time to join the action, still waiting to put a banker lap on the board.
He's probably just watching the monitors, seeing where the others are struggling before he heads out into the mix.
Greg Szabo slips down to P4, still anchored by that 3-minute-plus outlier of a lap. Lindo is still the man to beat out there, holding on to P1 as the session starts to settle in. Wallstrom's holding on to third for now, but he's got nearly 4 seconds to find if he wants to catch Lindo at the top. Renee Robertson manages to find a little more time, but he's still sitting in second behind Lindo. Wallstrom slips down to 4th as the session evolves. That 133 just isn't cutting it anymore.
He looks like he's fighting the car a bit in the slower sections. Might be searching for a better mechanical balance before he goes for a real flyer.
Jimmy Lindo is making this look easy at the top of the sheets. That 29.5 is proving hard to beat.
He's clearly found a sweet spot with the balance. When you've got that level of confidence this early, it's all about checking the tire wear over a long run.
Wallstrom is still hanging on to 4th, but that lap time is nearly 4 seconds behind the top of the pile. Lindo is still the class of the field, holding on to P1 as the clock ticks away. Sabo finally finds his feet, chopping nearly 2 minutes off his previous best to slot into 5th. Bontekis puts a time on the board in 6th, but a 36-minute lap suggests he spent more time in the garage than on the tarmac.
He's definitely looking to just check the car over. Now he needs to actually put some heat in those tires and show us what he's really got.
Nigel Walters finally shows his hand, jumping straight into 2nd place with a 30.1.
He didn't waste any time getting those tires up to temperature. He's still about 6/10 off Lindo, but that's a strong opening statement for his first real push.
Robertson gets shuffled down to P3 now that Walters has finally joined the action at the top.
He's been very consistent with those 30.5 laps, but he's lacking that final bit of aggressive rotation he needs to challenge Lindo's benchmark.
Jimmy Lindo is still the benchmark out there, holding on to that P1 slot while the rest of the field tries to chip away at his lead.
He's over 6/10 clear of Walters now. It's a comfortable gap, which lets him focus on his long-run pace without too much stress.
Renee Robertson is holding steady in third, though his pace is still about a second off Lindo's best.
He needs to find where those extra seconds are, maybe look at his braking points, and if he can get back on the power earlier.
Sten Wallstrom finds a massive chunk of time, dropping into the 31.8s, but it only secures him P5 for now.
He's definitely found some confidence under braking, but there's still a 2-second mountain to climb to catch Lindo at the top.
Jimmy Lindo's 29.5 is still the target everyone is chasing as we tick under 41 minutes left.
He's looked so composed through the high-speed stuff. When you've got that front-end bite, it makes hitting every apex feel like clockwork.
Renee Robertson isn't finding any extra speed at the moment, still holding on to third with that 130.5. Lindo is still the master of the timesheets here, sitting pretty in P1 as we reach the midway point.
You can see him just looking for those last little details now. When you're this consistently fast, it's all about tire management and finding those extra inches of track.
Greg Chabot is struggling to find the pace that he needs to really threaten the top 5 today. He's stuck in 6th place for now. Lindo is still the class of the field, holding onto that top spot while everyone else works to catch him.
He's definitely finds something in those corners. It's almost as if he's anticipating the car's every move, making it look effortless.
Wallstrom is still in P5 with that 31.8. He's found 2 seconds, but is still 2 seconds away from Lindo's best lap.
He's definitely making progress. But he's got to get into those 30s if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Lindo's 29.5 remains the target for everyone out there as we count down to the 37-minute mark.
He's keeping that rhythm going, hitting the apexes, and staying within his limits while the others work through their programs.
Walters makes a jump to 2nd place with a 29.8, just 0.3 adrift of Lindo.
He's definitely found some confidence on those tires. He's closing the gap now and really pushing Lindo for that P1 slot.
Renee Robertson gets back into P3 with a 30.5, still nearly a second off Lindo's best lap.
He's definitely making progress, but he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Greg Szabo is currently anchored in 6th, unable to find an answer for that 4-second deficit to Lindo.
He looks like he's settling into a longer stint. Sometimes you have to ignore the timing tower and just focus on making the car drivable for 40 minutes. Wallstrom is still in 5th. He's finding his feet, but those 31.8s aren't going to be enough as the session speeds up.
Bounticus puts a real lap on the board, jumping into 3rd with a 30.3.
He's finding his pace now. He's still nearly a second off Lindo's best lap, but he's making a statement early on.
Walters is still the 2nd fastest man on track with that 29.8, just 0.3 adrift of Lindo.
He's definitely making progress, but he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Bounticus is holding on to 3rd with a 30.3, but he's nearly a second off Lindo's best lap.
He's definitely making progress, but he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today. Wallstrom is looking a bit stagnant in 5th. That 2-second deficit to Lindo is a massive gap to close, with just over half the session remaining.
Montakis is still holding 3rd place with that 30.3, but he's nearly a second off Lindo's best lap.
He's definitely making progress, but he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Renee Robertson is sitting in 4th, and while that 30.5 is a solid banker, he's starting to lose touch with the lead pack. Bounticus is holding on to 3rd with a 30.3, but he's nearly a second off Lindo's best lap.
He's definitely making progress, but he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Greg Szabo is still languishing in 6th, over 4 seconds off the pace and seemingly stuck in a rut.
It's hard to tell if he's on a heavy fuel run or just hasn't found the setup window yet. Either way, he's got a lot of homework to do in these final 30 minutes.
Bounticus is holding on to 3rd with a 30.3, but he's nearly a second off Lindo's best lap.
He's definitely making progress, but he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Robertson is holding down fourth, but that 30.5 has been his benchmark for a while now.
He's hitting a plateau. Sometimes you just have to come into the pits, reset the brain, and try a completely different line through the technical sections to find that extra half second.
We're hitting the halfway mark, and Jimmy Lindo's name is still firmly at the top of the tower.
He's in that zone where the car is just an extension of himself. When you're that comfortable, you start playing with the fine margins rather than fighting the wheel.
Renee Robertson finally finds a couple more tenths to drop into the 30.4s, but it's not enough to move him from fourth.
He's definitely found some confidence on those tires. He's closing the gap now and really pushing Bountakis for that P3 slot. Sten Wallstrom is still stuck in P5. He's found 2 seconds, but is still 2 seconds away from Lindo's best lap.
Lindo is still the master of the timesheets here, sitting pretty in P1 as we reach the midway point.
He's definitely finds something in those corners. It's almost as if he's anticipating the car's every move, making it look effortless.
Walters is on a charge. He's just shaved his time down to a 29.5, putting him less than a tenth behind Lindo.
He's definitely making progress, but he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Szabo finds a fraction of a second, but he's actually dropped a place to 7th as the track continues to evolve.
Bountakis gets bumped down to 4th. He's got to be feeling the pressure now as the frontrunners find their rhythm.
Dominic Fovarg has finally made an appearance in the pit lane, but we're still waiting for a time from him.
Cutting it a bit fine, isn't he? He's only got about 27 minutes to get a feel for the car and the track conditions before the real pressure starts.
Walters is breathing down Lindo's neck now, just a few hundredths of a second between them at the top.
He's definitely found some confidence on those tires. He's closing the gap now and really pushing Lindo for that P1 slot.
Fovar doesn't waste any time, jumping straight into 5th with a 31.6 on his first real run. Montakis is holding on to 4th with a 30.3, but he's nearly a second off Lindo's best lap.
He's definitely making progress, but he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today. Sten Wallstrom is still stuck in P6. He's found 2 seconds, but is still 2 seconds away from Lindo's best lap.
Renee Robertson finally breaks into the 29s, just under half a second behind the leaders. Lindo is still the man to beat out there, holding on to P1 as the session starts to settle in.
He's definitely found something in those corners. It's almost as if he's anticipating the car's every move, making it look effortless.
Renee Robertson is holding steady in 3rd, but he's got to be looking at that half-second gap to the front row. Greg Szabo is currently anchored in 8th, unable to find an answer for that 4-second deficit to Lindo.
It's hard to tell if he's on a heavy fuel run or just hasn't found the setup window yet. Either way, he's got a lot of homework to do in these final 30 minutes.
Fovargy finds another 7/10 and stays in 5th, putting in a solid effort on his second real push. Weller is still taking his time in the pits as we count down to the 20-minute mark. Walters is out in front. He's just knocked Lindo off the top with a 29.4. Constable Barry is still in the pits as the 20-minute mark approaches, yet to set a time.
He's certainly taking his time to join the action. Maybe he's waiting for the track to be at its best for a qualifying simulation.
Walters is still the man to beat out there, holding on to P1 as the session starts to settle in. Greg Szabo is currently anchored in 9th, unable to find an answer for that 4-second deficit to Lindo.
He looks like he's settling into a longer stint. Sometimes you have to ignore the timing tower and just focus on making the car drivable for 40 minutes.
David Constable Barry is yet to show his hand here today as we hit the final 20 minutes.
He's certainly making life difficult for himself. If he doesn't get some laps in soon, he'll be going into qualifying blind.
Montakis is holding on to 4th with a 30.3, but he's nearly a second off Lindo's best lap.
He's definitely making progress, but he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Vovarg is currently anchored in 6th with a 30.9, about a second and a half off the pace.
He's definitely making progress, but he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Joel Lemrich is currently at the back of the pack in 10th place with a 32.2.
He's certainly making a steady start. Maybe he's testing out some setup changes before he really pushes for a time.
Lindo gets knocked down to 2nd by Walters, but he's still within striking distance.
He's definitely found some confidence on those tires. He's closing the gap now and really pushing Walters for that P1 slot.
Jody Fannin has finally made an appearance in the pit lane, but we're still waiting for a time from him.
He's definitely cutting it fine. If he doesn't get some laps in soon, he'll be going into qualifying with no baseline.
Lindo is still in 2nd place, less than a 10th behind Walters at the top. Weller is still taking his time in the pits as we count down to the 15-minute mark.
He's certainly making a steady start. Maybe he's waiting for the track to be at its best for a qualifying simulation?
David Constable-Berry finally jumps into the 31.3s, but that's only good for 8th for now. Weller finally gets a time on the board in 12th, but that 5-minute plus lap suggests he's just checking the car's setup.
He's definitely making a steady start. Maybe he's waiting for the track to be at its best for a qualifying simulation?
Lindo is still in second place, less than a 10th behind Walters at the top.
He's definitely making progress. But he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Jody Fannin is still yet to show his hand here today as we hit the final 13 minutes. Bontakis gets bumped down to 5th as the session speeds up and the gap to the top grows.
He's definitely making progress. But he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Chris Stokes is still taking his time in the pits as we count down to the final 10 minutes.
He's certainly making a steady start. Maybe he's waiting for the track to be at its best for a qualifying simulation?
James Allen is yet to show his hand here today as we hit the final 12 minutes.
He's definitely cutting it fine. If he doesn't get some laps in soon, he'll be going into qualifying with no baseline.
Bontakis gets bumped down to 6th as the session speeds up and the gap to the top grows.
He's definitely making progress. But he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Nigel Walters has been shuffled down to 2nd, but with 10 minutes to go, he's still very much in the hunt for the top spot. Chris Stokes is still waiting in the pits as the clock ticks under 10 minutes.
He's certainly making a steady start. Maybe he's waiting for the track to be at its best for a qualifying simulation.
Renee Robertson finally breaks into the 29s, just under half a second behind the leaders. Fountakis gets bumped down to 6th as the session speeds up and the gap to the top grows.
He's definitely making progress. But he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Lindo is still in 3rd place, less than a 10th behind Walters at the top.
He's definitely making progress. But he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Jody Fannin finally sets a time of 1:31.0 to slot into 9th on the grid.
He's definitely making progress. But he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
Joel Lemrich is currently at the back of the pack in 12th place with a 31.7.
He's certainly making a steady start. Maybe he's testing out some setup changes before he really pushes for a time.
Lindo is still in 4th place, just over half a second behind Walters at the top. Weller finally gets into the 31.3s to slot into 11th on the grid. Walters is still the 3rd fastest man on track with that 29.4, just over half a second adrift of Lindo. Jody Fannin has made a big move, jumping into 5th with a 29.8.
He's definitely making progress. But he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
bounty case breaks into the 30.1s, but he's dropped to 8th as the field closes in. James Allen finally gets a time on the board in 6th with a 30.0. David Constable Barry breaks into the 30.8s, but he's dropped to 10th as the field closes in. Fovargue is currently anchored in 8th with a 30.1, about a second and a half off the pace.
He's definitely making progress, but he's got to find more if he wants to compete at the sharp end today.
David Constable Barry finally jumps into the 30.3s, but that's only good for 9th for now. Fovargue is still holding on to 8th with a 30.1, about a second and a half off the pace. David Constable Barry is still holding on to 9th with a 30.3, about a second and a half off the pace. Just under 90 seconds to go, and Lindo has slipped to 4th after being the rabbit everyone was chasing for most of the hour.
He won't be too stressed. That 29.5 is still a banker, but he'll be looking at the telemetry to see exactly where the others found those extra tenths while he was in the garage.
Weller is digging deep on this final run, but that 31.0 keeps him down in 12th as the clock winds down.
He looks like he's struggling with the car's rotation in the tight stuff. He'll need to find a better balance before qualifying if he wants to climb out of the bottom half of the sheet.
Fauvard looks set to finish the hour in 8th, with that 30.1 likely being his final word for the session.
He's looked a bit tentative on the brakes. If they can't find a way to get that car turned in better for qualifying, he's going to be stuck in the mid-pack traffic.
Seconds left on the clock, and Chris Stokes hasn't turned a single lap. He's going into qualifying completely blind.
That is a nightmare scenario. You lose all that data on Tyree Degg and track evolution. He'll be playing catch-up from the moment the green flag drops. Fannon's left it late, but that 29.6 proves he's got the pace to stick with the frontrunners when it counts.
David Constable-Berry finally breaks into the 29s with a 99.3, but he's dropped to 8th as the field closes in. Chris Stokes is still waiting in the pits as the clock ticks under 90 seconds. Pit lane is open at Summit Point, and with a 10-knot wind gusting across the track, every driver is going to be fighting for stability on their hot laps. The clock is already counting down at Summit Point, and we're waiting for Jody Fannin to get a banker lap on the board.
With only 6 minutes total, there's no room for a sighting lap. Fannin needs to find the limit immediately, despite that tricky wind.
Renee Robertson is cutting it fine here. Less than 5.5 minutes left to find a gap in traffic and nail a flyer. Still no time on the board for Dominic Fauvergue, and with under 5 minutes to go, the margin for error is shrinking.
He's leaving it late. If he gets caught in traffic now, his entire grid position is compromised.
Just over 4 minutes left, and Joel Emmerich is still a ghost on the timing screen.
He's gambling on track evolution, but one lockup or a bit of traffic, and he's starting at the back of the bus.
Jody Fannin is really playing with fire here. We're down to the final 4 minutes, and there's still a blank space next to his name.
He's likely committed to a one-run strategy. It puts immense pressure on the driver to nail the braking zones perfectly on the very first flyer.
Fannin finally puts a time on the board, and it's a massive one. Straight into P1 with a 1:30.1.
He waited for the track to rubber in, and it paid off. That's a confident lap, but he's left the door open for a response with 2.5 minutes left.
The clock is ticking down toward the final 2 minutes, and Joel Emmerich still hasn't posted a time.
That is massive pressure. One mistake, or one wide exit now, and he's essentially handing a back-of-the-grid start to himself.
Emmerich crosses the line, but the timing screen isn't budging. That lap's been deleted.
He must have pushed too wide and triggered a track limits violation. With less than 2 minutes to go, he's got exactly one shot left to get off the bottom of the pile.
David Constable-Barry is finding more time out there, currently 2/10 up on his personal best as we hit the final 90 seconds. James Allen is lighting up the timing screen, currently a 1/4 of a second up on his best lap with just over a minute to go.
He's really hustling the car now. If he can keep it tidy through the final few corners, that is more than enough to snatch pole away from Fannin.
Look at the timing screen for Chris Stokes. He is over a second faster than his best lap as he heads toward the final corners.
That is a massive gain. He's found a rhythm he didn't have before, but he can't afford to get greedy on the entry and blow it now.
Tim Weller is finding a lot of time in the final minute. He's 4/10 up on his best through the middle of the lap.
He needs this. P12 is no man's land, but this lap should see him vault up the order if he can keep the car tidy through the final turn.
Stokes is digging deep on his final attempt, finding nearly half a second over his current best, with only 30 seconds on the clock. Fannin has slipped down to 7th while we weren't looking, but he's over a 10th up on his best as the clock hits 0. Fannin delivers when it counts. He punches in a 1:29.9 and jumps back into P3 just as the session winds down.
Breaking that 130 barrier is a massive psychological boost. He had to be inch perfect through the final sector to find that extra 10th.
Renee Robertson is absolutely flying, more than half a second up as we enter the final 40 seconds.
She's left her best work for the very end. If she holds this together, we're looking at a huge jump up that grid.
Chris Stokes is finding time when it matters most. He's nearly 3/10 up on his personal best as we enter the final minute of qualifying. Daniel Kotchis is really fighting the car on this lap. He's over a second off his own benchmark with time running out.
He likely overcooked the entry somewhere and killed his momentum. He needs to reset mentally and find a gap for one last flyer if he wants to move up from 13th.
Engines are pinned, and the grid is set as we wait for the lights to drop here at Summit Point.
That 9-mile-an-hour wind is going to be a factor too. It's enough to really upset the balance in the high-speed sections.
Rich Snape has that MK1 Cortina parked right on the front row, a massive opportunity for the Brit, starting from P2.
He's punching well above his weight for an AM-class driver. Keeping that car balanced when it starts to roll through the technical bits is going to be his biggest challenge today.
David Constable-Berry puts another MK1 Cortina right at the sharp end, sitting P4 and ready to pounce.
He is in a strong position. Being Pro-Am, he has the experience to manage those brakes over a race distance, which is where these older cars really start to struggle.
Nigel Walters makes it a fleet of MK1 Cortinas at the front, starting from the 3rd row and 6th.
Walters has his work cut out. In these cars, starting mid-pack means you are managing a lot of weight transfer while trying to avoid the chaos into that first braking zone.
Right behind him, James Allen starts in 7th, another Cortina looking to make up ground early.
Allen won't be happy being behind Walters. He will be looking to use that Pro-Am experience to pick his way through the AM drivers ahead before the pack thins out.
Renee Robertson completes that 4th row and 8th, adding to the heavy Pro-Am presence in the middle of this Cortina pack.
Fovarg is right in the belly of the beast in 9th, and he will need to be clinical with his footwork to keep that rear end under control when the lights go green.
Weller rounds out the top 10 in another MK1 Cortina, hoping to keep his nose clean as they funnel into the first corner. Neil Constable-Berry starts just outside the top 10 in 11th, right in the thick of it.
The mid-pack in these cars is a nightmare. Everyone is looking for the same bit of road, and those drum brakes do not exactly inspire confidence when things get tight.
Further back, our Hungarian entry, Daniel Kosick, is lining up in 13th in that MK1 Cortina.
Starting mid-pack is a massive test of patience. Kosick has the Pro-Am pace, but he'll be staring at a wall of chrome and exhaust smoke for those first few laps.
John Bontakis has the best seat in the house, lining up on pole position in that MK1 Cortina.
Being an AM driver on pole is a double-edged sword. He has the clear air, but he has got 20 hungry drivers looking to exploit any tiny mistake he makes in the opening lap.
The lights go green, and we are racing at summit point with a massive swarm of Cortinas screaming toward the first corner.
Bounty's got a decent launch, but you can see the cars behind dancing on the limit of traction, trying to keep those rear wheels from lighting up.
Bounticus holds his nerve through the opening sequence, and he is keeping that lead into the middle of this first lap.
He is taking a nice, wide line, not giving the drivers behind any chance to poke a nose in.
Fovarg is holding on to 9th, tucked right into the slipstream of that lead group.
In these cars, being in the middle of the pack is all about managing your braking points, while the car in front is moving around. Dominic's doing a solid job keeping it straight.
Fovarg's holding steady in 9th, right in the thick of that mid-pack scrap.
It's a smart play. Lap 1 in a Cortina is like dancing on ice. You don't win the race here, but you can certainly lose it if you get too greedy.
Alan's had a rough opening lap. He's tumbled 5 spots and sits 12th now.
It's so easy to lose momentum in these cars. Once you're caught on the wrong line or get checked up in a bottleneck, you're just watching the pack sail by.
Lemrich and Stokes are practically sharing the same piece of tarmac here. The gap is literally 0 as they fight for 10th.
In a car that leans this much through the corners, being that close is a massive risk. One of them is going to have to blink first, or they are both going off.
Lemrich gets it done. He's leapfrogged Stokes for 10th and is already trying to break the toe. Stokes isn't letting him get away. He's hovering just 4/10ths back as we tick down under 9 minutes remaining in this one.
He needs to be careful not to overdrive the car trying to stay in that slipstream. You start sliding these Cortinas too much this early, and you'll have no rear grip by the final lap.
Stokes has fallen away completely now. The gap is out to nearly 3 seconds to Lemrich, who's pulled a massive gap in just a few corners.
He's definitely had a massive moment somewhere back there, lost all that momentum, and fallen into 11th behind the cars that were right on his tail.
David Constable-Berry is right at the top of the pack in 5th, but he's got Robertson all over his bumper.
Robertson's even closer now. He's just waiting for the right moment to pull the trigger.
Lindo is all over the back of Alan's Cortina for 11th as they head into the next turn.
He's keeping his nose in there, looking for any tiny overlap. If he can get his bumper in there, he'll force Alan wide.
Lindo takes 11th. He's just ahead of Alan, and they are bumper to bumper here.
He really set that one up well, forcing the error and just putting the car where he needed to be.
Wait, Alan has already got him back. Lindo's fallen back into 12th, and he's not happy about it.
He got a little bit of wheel spin through that corner, and that's all James Allen needed to get back alongside and take the place away.
Weller is glued to the back of Fovarg as we start lap 2, 3/10ths the gap.
He is keeping it tidy, but Fovarg is an old hand in these Pro-Am battles. He will be making that Cortina as wide as a house right now.
Weller's vaulted up to 7th, while Fovarg has plummeted. What happened there? A nearly 5-second gap now.
He's definitely had a massive spin, maybe even a bit of a trip into the scenery to lose that much time in one lap.
Renee Robertson's got Nigel Walters right in his crosshairs as we tick over 7 minutes left in this one. Renee's moved up to 4th now. He's just ahead of Walters after a great battle through that last sector.
He's really being clinical in that car. That's what you want when you're racing someone as tough as Nigel.
Allen's trying to make up ground, and he's only 2/10 back from Fovarg in 11th.
Allen's lost a little bit of time now. Fovarg's gap is back up to 0.6 of a second.
Walters is still giving chase in 5th, looking for another chance to get back past Robertson. Walters has fallen back a little. He's lost 2/10 to Robertson, who's found a little more pace. There is something so visceral about a grid full of Cortinas. The noise, the body roll, it is like a time capsule has burst open on the main straight.
It is a workout too. No power steering, drum brakes that fade if you look at them wrong. You really have to manhandle these things to get a lap time out of them.
John Bontakis is making it look like a Sunday drive at the moment, though. He hasn't put a wheel wrong since the lights went out.
He is being very disciplined. In vintage racing, if you get greedy with the curves, you will end up with a broken suspension or a very expensive repair bill.
I assume your mechanics usually had the bill ready before you even stepped out of the cockpit back in the day?
They had it on a clipboard. But seriously, with the clock winding down, the heat soak in these engines is going to start robbing a bit of that top-end power.
James Allen is tucked right under the rear bumper of Fovarg, just 3/10 separating them as we cross the 5-minute mark. Allen has done it. He's snatched 10th away from Fovarg, and there is absolutely nothing between them.
He really leaned on the car there to make that stick. Fovarg is going to be fuming. He left the door open just a crack, and Allen kicked it down.
That scrap for 10th between Allen and Fovarg is exactly what makes these Cortina grids so special. Just pure mechanical grit.
It's a dance, isn't it? You have to balance that trailing throttle oversteer just right. Too much and you're spinning, too little and you're pushing wide and losing time.
Rich Nape in 2nd is still keeping the pressure on Bontakis, but John hasn't given him so much as a sniff of the lead yet.
Bontakis is driving a very defensive line without actually blocking. He knows exactly where Snape is and is placing his car to compromise Rich's exit speeds.
I recall you being quite the specialist at making your car 3 lanes wide back in your touring car days, Sky.
If you leave the door open, you're just inviting them to tea, Hal. I prefer to keep the door locked and the porch lights off.
Jimmy Lindo is glued to the rear of Allen's Cortina, just 3/10 back as we hit the final 4 minutes of regulation time. Lindo is keeping the pressure on Allen, but he can't quite find a way past right now.
He's keeping him honest, but he'll need to be a little bit more aggressive if he wants that 10th place back.
Wait, Daniel Kosick is right there. He's just a 10th behind Allen for 9th now.
He's been very patient, and he is definitely finding a lot more pace as the car starts to lighten up with less fuel.
Wait, Kosick has moved up to 9th. He's just ahead of Allen, and the gap is already out to 6/10.
He really found the grip through that section, and James Allen is definitely starting to struggle with his rear tires.
Ray Robertson is absolutely hounding Rich Snape for that final podium spot, with just 4/10 between them as they scream past us.
He has got the toe down the straight, but Snape is placing that Cortina perfectly. He knows if he misses one apex, Robertson will be right alongside. Robertson is still exactly where he was, just 4/10ths back, trying to force Snape into a mistake that just isn't coming.
Snape's managed to stretch that gap to 5/10ths now, finally getting a bit of breathing room from Robertson. Wait, Robertson is back on him. The gap's back down to 4/10ths as they head into the next sequence.
He really found the grip through that last corner and got a massive run on Snape. This is a brilliant battle for the podium.
Rene's really pushing now. He knows Snape's tires are starting to give up the ghost after all that defending.
He needs to be smart, though. If he pushes too hard too early, he'll find himself with no grip when the final lap comes around.
Snape's managed to stretch that gap to 5/10ths now, finally getting a bit of breathing room from Robertson. Fovarg is trying to claw his way back into the top 10, currently 4/10ths behind Neil Constable-Berry in 12th. Wait, Fovarg's moved up to 11th now. He's right on the back of Neil Constable-Berry for 10th.
He really found the grip through that section, and Neil is definitely starting to struggle with his rear tires. This is going to be a classic finish.
Wait, Neil has already got him back. Fovarg's fallen back into 12th, and he's not happy about it. Weller is right on the gearbox of Fovarg now, just 2/10ths back, despite that messy 1:40 on the previous tour.
He's recovered well from whatever mistake he made, but passing a Pro-Am driver like Dominic is a different beast entirely when your tires are likely screaming for mercy.
Weller dives through. He's grabbed 12th from Fovarg, and they are literally rubbing his racing at the moment.
Fovarg is staying in the fight, tucked right into that slipstream. He's looking to return the favor before this lap is over.
Wait, Fovarg's moved up to 12th now. He's right on the back of Tim Weller for 11th. We are approaching the business end of this one at Summit Point, and I have to say, seeing these Cortinas tripoding through the corners never gets old.
It looks spectacular from the outside, but inside that cabin, you are wrestling a bear. If you do not get the weight transfer exactly right before you turn in, you are just a passenger.
Bontakis has been the headmaster today, has he not? He has kept a very unruly class of drivers behind him for nearly the entire session.
He has been textbook. It is not just about speed in these older cars. It is about mechanical sympathy. You can see some of the guys in the mid-pack are already starting to suffer from brake fade.
I have noticed a few of them taking much wider entries lately. Is that purely to cool the drums, or are they just losing the front end?
A bit of both. Once those front tires get cooked, the understeer is massive. I remember a race at Brands Hatch where I had to start using the gearbox more than the pedal just to slow down.
Which usually ended with a very loud bang and a very unhappy team principal, if I remember your career correctly.
Hey, if the engine is still in one piece, you were not trying hard enough. But these drivers are being surprisingly disciplined given how much these cars want to slide.
The battle for the podium between Snape and Robertson has been the highlight for me. They have been within half a second of each other for what feels like an eternity.
That is the mental game. You are waiting for the person in front to miss a gear or lock a wheel. One tiny slip and that 4/10th gap vanishes instantly.
We've got very little time left on the clock. This is where the fatigue really starts to set in for the AM drivers.
Exactly. Your legs get heavy, your focus drifts, and suddenly you are 3 feet past your braking marker. Let's see who holds it together.
Bontakis is right on the cusp of glory. Less than 20 seconds from the checkered flag with Fannin glued to his bumper.
0.2 of a second. This is the ultimate test of nerves for Bontakis. If he misses just one apex, Fannin is going to slide right past.
Bontakis holds on. He takes the checkered flag and a hard-fought win at Summit Point.
Fannin just didn't quite have enough of a run on him, but that is still a brilliant drive from third on the grid to second.
Snape holds on to the third spot. He started from the front row, and that is a podium he really had to work for today. In 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, it's Renee Robertson, David Constable-Berry, Nigel Walters, and Joel Lemrick. Renee Robertson secures 4th, with David Constable-Berry, Nigel Walters, and Joel Lemrich filing in behind him to complete the top 7.
That group really made life difficult for each other, but they all kept it clean enough to bring those cars home in one piece.
The camera is on Jody Fannin, now in 10th, and he is right on the bumper of Rich Snape as we look at the mid-pack before the start. John Bounticus is buried back in 12th as we look down the order, just 3/10 behind James Allen before the green flag drops.
Starting that far back in a Cortina is a massive challenge. You are dealing with everyone else's missed gears and locked brakes while trying to pick your own way through the traffic.
Renee Robertson is tucked right behind Rich Snape for 10th as we wait for the lights to go on.
He is in a good spot here. If he gets a clean launch, he can use that Pro-Am experience to follow the leaders through and stay away from the chaos behind him.
Allen's right on the back of Snape for 9th now as they begin their first full lap. Weller is holding on to 5th place, with David Constable-Berry literally rubbing bumpers with him as they battle for the lead. Renee's moved up into 6th place, keeping the pressure on Jody Fannin for 5th. Snape's just a 10th back from Robertson for 6th, as we enter the 8th minute.
He's keeping him honest, but Robertson is an old hand in these Pro-Am battles. He will be making that Cortina as wide as a house right now.
Weller is clinging to 9th place, just 3/10 back from James Allen in 8th. Wait, Daniel Kosick is right there. He's just a 10th behind Robertson for 5th now.
He's been very patient, and he is definitely finding a lot more pace as the car starts to lighten up with less fuel.
Wait, Joel Lemrick is literally on the back of Neil Constable-Berry for the lead.
He really found the grip through that section, and he is ready to pounce. Neil's gonna have a hard time defending this.
He's through. Joel Lemrick takes the lead from Neil Constable-Berry with only 5 minutes left on the clock.
Great patience there. He waited for Neil to miss the apex by just an inch, and he was right through the gap.
Rich Snape is absolutely hounding the back of Robertson, just 0.2 of a second between them in this battle for 6th.
Snape is really leaning on those front tires to keep that gap tight. He is an AM driver putting a lot of pressure on a Pro-Am right now.
Wait, Dominic Fovarg is right there. He's just 1/10 behind Joel Lemrich for 2nd now. Fovarg's moved up to 2nd. He's just ahead of Joel Lemrich, and the gap is already out to 0.2.
He really found the grip through that section, and Joel is definitely starting to struggle with his rear tires.
Wait, Joel's back. He's reclaimed 2nd place, and Fovarg is now back in 3rd.
This is an incredible fight for that podium position between those two.
Snape's defending hard now. James Allen is just 1/10 behind him in 8th. Wait, James Allen has moved up to 7th. He's just ahead of Snape, and the gap is already out to 0.2.
He really found the grip through that section, and Rich is definitely starting to struggle with his rear tires.
Wait, Rich is back. He's reclaimed 7th place, and James Allen is now back in 8th.
What a scrap! Neither of them is letting up.
It's neck and neck, the closest battle we've seen in a while.
The only thing closer than James Allen to the mid-table bandit right now is the paint on their cars. Talk about a close encounter.
Nigel Walters is really putting the squeeze on Jimmy Lindo now, just 4/10 between them as they work through lap 8.
Walters is using every inch of the tarmac to find an opening, but the rear of that Cortina is going to be very light under braking at this stage. He's got to be precise.
8 minutes left on the clock, and Jimmy Lindo's side of the timing screen is still looking awfully blank.
He's likely making some last-minute aero adjustments. Better to lose time now than be fighting an unbalanced car when the points are on the line.
Under 8 minutes left in the session, and Nigel Walters is still sitting without a time on the board.
He could be working through some suspension tweaks, but he'll want to get a banker lap in soon before the track gets too busy.
The clock is ticking down to 7 minutes, and Constable Barry is still waiting to put a time on the board.
Fannin is cutting it fine now. You want at least one representative run to check the balance on low fuel, and that window is closing fast.
Lindo is really pushing the limits of the clock now. 6 minutes left, and we still haven't seen a flyer from him.
Fannin is really up against it now. At this stage, he's only going to get one, maybe two clean runs to find his markers before this session wraps up.
Five minutes left on the clock, and Lindo still hasn't posted a time. He's really leaving it to the last second to get a read on the track.
It's a risky game to play. If he catches traffic or a yellow flag on this run, he's going into qualifying completely blind on his braking markers. Tim Weller's leaving it incredibly late. If you haven't found your rhythm with 4 minutes to go, you're starting the weekend on the back foot.
Four minutes on the clock, and Daniel Kosis is still a ghost on the timing screen.
He's cutting it incredibly fine. At this point, you're just hoping the telemetry is solid, because you've got zero real-world feel for the track surface.
We're down to 3.5 minutes left in the session, and Joel Lemrich is still waiting to put a mark on the timing sheet.
This is high stakes now. He'll basically get one outlap and one shot at a banker, and if he finds traffic, his practice is a complete write-off.
Just under 3 minutes remaining, and Neil Constable-Barry still hasn't posted a time. Talk about leaving it to the death.
He's basically forced himself into a one-lap shootout here. If he locks a brake or catches a slower car on this final run, he's going into qualifying with zero data on the track state.
The clock is rapidly winding down now, just over 2 minutes left, and Chris Stokes still hasn't put a mark on the board.
That's an enormous amount of pressure to put on a single lap. You're coming out on cold tires, trying to find your braking points instantly, and one lockup ruins your entire data set for the session.
Nigel Walters finally shows his hand, and he's gone straight to the top of the pile with a 1:29.372. David Constable-Barry finally puts a mark on the board, popping into P4 with less than 90 seconds to spare. Tim Weller finally clocks in. A 1:30.559 puts him straight into 6th with the clock almost at 0.
He basically had one shot at that. No time left to adjust the setup or find another 10th, so that's the baseline he's taking into the next session.
Fannin delivers right at the buzzer. A 1:29.830 puts him straight into 3rd place. Neil Constable-Barry finally breaks his silence on the timing tower. A 1:31.095 puts him into 7th place just as the clock runs out. Jimmy Lindo finally shows his hand, and what a hand it is. A 1:29.628 rockets him straight up into P2 with under a minute remaining.
He really didn't leave himself any margin for error there. To find that kind of pace on what was likely his only flying lap is seriously impressive.
Stokes finally gets a lap on the board, but a 2:56 isn't going to worry anyone at the top of the standings.
That's a massive gap. He's clearly had an off or a tech issue, and with 80 seconds left, he's out of time to fix the damage to his run plan.
The pit lane is open here at Summit Point, and that 7-mile-an-hour wind is going to make finding a clean rhythm a real challenge.
7's enough to nudge the car offline if you're lazy with the wheel. You'll feel it through the faster sections, especially on fresh cold rubber.
5.5 minutes left on the clock, and Jody Fannin is under pressure to get a clean lap on the board before this session disappears.
6 minutes is a blink of an eye. Fannin can't afford a single lockup or a wide exit here, where that grid position is going to suffer.
Nigel Walters is just joining the party, 5 minutes and change left to make it count.
He's cutting it fine. You really want one banker lap and one flyer in a sprint session like this, and he hasn't even started the first one.
Tim Weller is still looking for his first-time run, and the clock is starting to tick down past that 4-minute mark.
Fannin is playing a dangerous game now. Any mistake or a yellow flag in these closing minutes and he's buried at the back of the grid.
Fannin finally puts a marker down. A 1:29.414 shoots him straight into P2.
Solid banker lap. With 2:45 left, he's got the breathing room to really lean on the car for one last big push.
Chris Stokes is cutting it incredibly fine here. Just 2.5 minutes left, and the scoreboard is still blank next to his name.
This is maximum pressure. He's got time for exactly one flying lap, so he'd better hope the track is clear and those tires are right in the window.
Fannin is lighting up the timing screens here, nearly 2/10 up on his best, and looking to claw back into those top 3 slots. Kokessis is finding serious pace now, 3.5 tenths up on his previous best as he looks to break into that top 10. Jody Fannin is on a charge, over a tenth up on his best as we tick down to the final minute of the session.
He's finding time in the middle sector. That's where you really have to trust the front end to bite if you want to climb higher than 4th.
Walters is sitting pretty in P1 with that 129.162, and he is virtually dead level with his own benchmark on this run.
Consistency is king. Being within 100th of your best means you've found the limit. Now it's just about holding your breath and hoping nobody else finds a 10th.
Wait, Dominic Fovargue still hasn't got a time on the board, and we've got less than a minute to go. Fovargue finally puts it across the stripe, a 1:30.392, which is only good enough for P11 as the clock winds down. Thanen is absolutely flying on this final lap, nearly a quarter of a second up on his current time with the checkered flag looming.
2/10 is massive here. If he keeps this together, he's taking a massive chunk out of that gap to the pole position.
Thanen snatches the top spot. He clocks in a 1:28.946, which puts him right at the head of the pack. Coaches is chasing himself on this one, bang on his previous best time with 20 seconds to go.
He needs to squeeze every ounce of grip he can get out of this final lap. There's no time left for anything else.
Snape is looking at a 1:29.400, holding on to P6 as we head into the final 30 seconds of this session.
He's consistent, but he's not gaining. If he doesn't find a 10th or 2 in these last few corners, he's going to be in the middle of a very tight pack.
James Allen is finally finding his feet out there. He's currently over 20 seconds faster than that previous 3-minute outlier.
He clearly had an issue on that first run, but with 48 seconds left, he's effectively on a one-lap shootout to avoid starting from the back.
Fovargue is currently on the edge of the top 12, with his 1:30.038 showing he's at least finding a little bit of rhythm.
He's still a bit off the pace, but in a field like this, every 10th counts. If he can get into the 129s, he'll be a lot more comfortable.
Daniel Coxis is bleeding time on this run, nearly 9 seconds down on that 1:29.794 he set earlier.
He's clearly backed off after a mistake. With 80 seconds left, he's got just enough time to reset the car and find a gap for one last flyer.
The engines are screaming here at Summit Point, the grid is set, and you can feel the tension building through the screen.
That wind's gusting. Up to 10 miles an hour now, it's going to make the cars feel nervous on the brakes into that first complex.
David Constable-Barry has put that Cortina MK1 right on the front row, a massive statement from the Englishman as we wait for the lights.
To be sitting in P2 as a Pro-Am is impressive, but he's got to manage those skinny tires early on, or he'll be a sitting duck into the first corner.
Jimmy Lindo rounds out the second row in another MK1 Cortina, putting himself in a prime spot for the drag race to turn 1.
Lindo's got a lot of car to manage from P4. Those Cortinas love to dance under braking, so he'll need to be precise to avoid any opening lap chaos.
Renee Robertson completes the top 5, lining up that MK1 Cortina right in the heart of the action.
Starting 5th is a double-edged sword. He's got to find clear air immediately, or risk getting swallowed up by the pack behind.
Rich Snape starts from 7th, the lead AM class driver on the grid and looking to hold his own against the Pro-Am pack in that MK1 Cortina.
He's in a bit of a sandwich there. As an AM, the pressure to not get caught up in a first lap scrap with the Pro-Am cars is massive. He needs to stay disciplined.
The Dutchman Joel Limerick sits in 9th, the second of our AM drivers looking to make up ground early in that MK1 Cortina. And starting from 10th, we have Neil Constable-Barry in another MK1 Cortina, making it a real family affair near the front of the pack.
10 is a tricky spot. The field really bunches up through that first complex, and he'll need to keep his nose clean to survive the opening lap.
Further back in 12th, Dominic Fovargue is the one to watch as he tries to carve through the mid-pack in that MK1 MK1 Cortina.
Being buried in the middle of the grid like that is nerve-wracking. You're constantly reacting to everyone else's mistakes instead of driving your own race.
Way back in 14th, we have the Englishman Chris Stokes, a pro-class driver who's definitely starting out of position in that MK1 Cortina.
He'll be on the warpath from there. When you're a pro driver starting that deep, you aren't looking to settle in. You're looking for gaps that haven't even opened yet.
And sitting right at the sharp end on pole, it is Jody Fannin in that MK1 Cortina, looking to lead the field away here at Summit Point.
Fannin has the best seat in the house, but the pressure of leading a pack of Cortinas into that first braking zone is immense. He needs a clinical launch to break the slipstream.
Green, green, green. Fannin nails the start, but David Constable Barry is absolutely glued to his bumper as they scream towards the first turn.
Someone is going to have to give in there. They are 3 wide in the middle of the pack, and nobody is backing off. Fannin didn't put a foot wrong on that start. He's claimed the apex, and that MK1 Cortina is looking very stable in the lead.
Cleanest way to start a race at Summit Point is out in the clean air, and Fannin's done exactly that. Neil Constable Barry's been shuffled back a couple of spots here, dropping from 10th down to 12th in that frantic opening lap.
He probably got caught on the outside line through the complex. Once you lose your momentum there, the door just stays open for everyone else.
Daniel Kosic is making moves already, picking up 7th and starting his charge through the field in that MK1 Cortina.
Kosic just snatched that away from Rich Snape, who probably didn't see him coming into that braking zone.
Daniel Kosic has worked his way up to 7th, picking off a position on this chaotic opening lap.
He's used the slipstream perfectly there. In these cars, you've got to be brave on the brakes to make that move into the complex.
Rich Snape has been on an absolute tear through this opening lap, carving his way up to 5th, and he is now glued to the back of Jimmy Lindo.
0 seconds between them. That is literally as close as it gets. Snape's AM status isn't holding him back one bit against the Pro-Am ahead.
Snape has found a way past. He's up into 4th and already starting to break the toe from Lindo.
That was textbook. Snape didn't hesitate, and now, with a 4/10 gap, he can focus on chasing down the podium spots.
John Bounticus is absolutely haunting the back of Daniel Kosic in 7th, with less than 1/10 of a second separating those two Cortinas.
He's looking to put himself right in the slipstream down this next stretch. 9 minutes on the clock and the field is already starting to heat up.
Bonticus has lost a little bit of ground to Daniel Kosic, the gap stretching out to nearly half a second now as they work through the middle part of the lap.
He might have had a little moment or missed an apex there. That's a huge shift in momentum, but he's still well within striking distance.
Joel Lemrich is absolutely glued to the back of Neil Constable Barry. There's nothing between them as they fight for 11th.
0 seconds on the timing screen. Lemrich is using every bit of that slipstream, just waiting for Constable Barry to blink.
Lemrich gets it done. He has picked off Neil Constable Barry and jumped up to 11th, putting nearly half a second between them in the process.
He set that up perfectly through the previous section. Now he has got a bit of breathing room to settle his rhythm, but in these Cortinas, you can never get too comfortable with a 4/10 gap.
Tim Weller is absolutely hounding James Allen for 9th. Just 2/10 the difference as they start lap 2.
He's close enough to see what Allen had for breakfast. That 1:30 lap time shows Weller has the pace to make this move happen soon.
John Bonticus hasn't given up on that fight with Daniel Kosic in 7th. He's just under half a second back now after his best lap of the race.
0.7 of a second gap is still quite a lot in these cars, but Buntaki is making sure he stays close enough to strike if Kosick makes a mistake.
Daniel Kosic is just starting to stretch his legs here, pulling the gap to Bantakis out to 0.6 of a second.
That is exactly what you want as the lead car. Breaking that toe makes it so much harder for John to mount a counterattack into the braking zones.
Tim Weller is stalking the back of James Allen's Cortina, only 0.3 in it, as they scrap for 9th place with 7 minutes left on the clock.
He's right in the toe there. At 0.3, you're gaining on the straight, but that front end can get a bit light and push into understeer when you're following this closely through the fast stuff.
Chris Stokes is absolutely hounding Neil Constable-Barry now, just 0.2 of a second between them, as the pro driver looks to pick off another spot in that Cortina.
Stokes is placing his car so well, poking his nose out to let Neil know he's there. When you've got a pro driver behind you like that, the mirrors start to look very big, and it's so easy to miss a braking point.
Stokes finds his way through. He snatched 12th place away from Neil Constable-Barry, but it's far from over, with just 0.2 between them.
He made that look easy, but Neil's still right there in the toe. If Stokes can't break that 0.2 gap quickly, he's going to have to defend all over again.
Bantakis is reeling him back in. That gap to Daniel Kosick is down to 0.4 of a second as they carve through the lap.
He's clawed back 0.2 since we last looked at this battle. In these Cortinas, when you start closing like that, you can really feel the momentum swinging your way.
Weller is having a real hard time getting past James Allen. That gap is stuck at 0.3 of a second as we tick under 5 minutes to go.
Allen's keeping the door shut and making that Cortina wide as a house. Weller's lap times are improving, but he's got to find a way through the dirty air soon.
Weller has fallen back just a tiny bit. That gap to James Allen's now 0.4 of a second as we move through this third lap.
He's still there or thereabouts, but he's going to need to stay close for the run onto the long straight if he wants to make that move stick.
Bantakis is watching Daniel Kosick edge away here. The gap is stretched out to 0.6 as we cross the line into lap 4.
He's still lapping consistently in the 130S, but Kosick is just finding that little bit of extra grit to break the toe. It's so hard to claw back those tenths once you lose that aerodynamic pull.
Tim Weller has just punched in his best lap of the race, a sub 130, and it's brought him right back onto the gearbox of James Allen.
He's really found a rhythm now, but with only 4 minutes left on the clock, he needs to stop watching and start making a move before he runs out of tarmac.
Weller's lost a huge chunk of time to James Allen there. That gap has ballooned out to 0.8 of a second.
He likely overcooked it into a corner, trying to force the issue. Now he is out of the slipstream, and that makes catching back up a massive mountain to climb with time running down.
Bantakis is on a mission. He has just hammered in a 129.574, his fastest of the race, and he has dragged himself right back onto Kosick's bumper.
Finding nearly half a second on your own best lap this late in the race is special. He has clearly found a line that works, and Kosick is going to be feeling the heat now.
James Allen is finding his best pace now. He has closed to within 0.4 of Dominic Fovard in 8th.
That 1 minute 29 seconds and 5 milliseconds from Allen was a real flyer. It's put him right in the mix for those higher order positions before the flag drops.
Something massive has happened there. James Allen has jumped up to 8th, and Dominic Fovard has plummeted down to 10th, falling nearly 3 seconds back.
Fovard must have had a major moment or a trip through the grass to lose 2 places, and that much time in one go. Allen is away, and clear now, he's basically been gifted that position.
Dominic Fovard is already looking to recover those lost positions, and he has got the gap down to 0.8 behind Joel Lemrich in 9th.
He's keeping his head down and found his best lap of the race. That's exactly how you get your composure back. Focus on the braking points and let the pace do the talking.
Fauvargue is really suffering there. The gap to Joel Emmerich's out to over a second, and that's not what he needs right now.
He's lost a little bit of time somewhere, and that's really going to hurt his chances of getting back into that top 9.
James Allen has found himself in another fight, this time for 7th, as he closes up to within 4/10 of Tim Weller.
He's definitely dropped off his best pace with that 1 minute 31 seconds and 5 milliseconds. But Weller must have hit the wall somewhere as well because Allen's still gaining on him.
James Allen has found a way past. He moves up into 7th, and he's already managed to stretch that lead over Tim Weller to 0.7 of a second.
He used Weller's mistake to his advantage there. Once you get that overlap in a Cortina, you've got to commit, and now he's pulled just far enough away to stop Weller from lunging back at the next big braking zone.
Weller is trying to mount a comeback after losing that spot to Allen. He's whittled the gap down to half a second as they hustle through lap 6.
That's the best response to getting overtaken. Don't let them get away. Weller is keeping himself in the hunt, using Allen as a reference point to drag that Cortina back into the fight.
Rich Snape is absolutely flying in 4th, putting in his personal best as he hunts down Nigel Walters for that final podium spot.
A 1 minute 29 seconds and 3 milliseconds is a massive statement from an AM-class driver. He has got the gap down to exactly a second, and at this rate, Walters is going to have a real fight on his hands before the flag.
Weller is refusing to let Allen get away. He has clawed another 10th back and is now just 4/10 behind as they work through lap 7.
He is really working that Cortina through the corners. At 4/10, he is right in the prime slipstream zone, just waiting for the car ahead to have a slight wiggle.
Weller takes the place back. He's surged back into 7th, and there is absolutely nothing between him and James Allen as they continue this scrap.
0 seconds on the clock. I've been in these dogfights before, where you're just swapping paint and positions every lap. It's exhausting, but man, is it good racing.
David Constable-Barry is absolutely glued to the rear bumper of Jimmy Lindo, with just 0.2 of a second separating them in this scrap for 4th.
He's putting that Cortina in all the right places. At this distance, Jimmy's looking in the mirrors more than the track, and that's exactly how mistakes happen under pressure.
David Constable-Barry's fallen back a bit there. That gap to Jimmy Lindo's gone out to 0.8 of a second as we move through lap 7.
He might have had a little moment or a bit of a wobble under braking. In these MK ones, if you're not careful with the weight transfer, that tail will step out and you'll lose all your momentum in a heartbeat.
James Allen is keeping Tim Weller honest in 7th, just 4/10 back as we move towards the business end of this race.
Allen's keeping it very tight, and that's exactly what he's going to need if he wants to mount a challenge before the flag drops.
Chris Stokes is absolutely haunting Dominic Fauvargue for 9th, putting in a personal best to drag himself within 4/10 of a second.
He's really found his rhythm this late in the race. When you're in that Cortina and the fuel starts to drop, the car becomes a bit more flighty, and Stokes seems to be handling it better than the guys around him.
Stokes has fallen back a bit there. That gap to Dominic Fauvargue is now out to 0.7 of a second as they start lap 8.
He's still in the hunt, but that 3/10 swing in Fauvargue's favor has given him a little bit of breathing room at a time when he really needed it.
Nigel Walters is leading the chasing pack in 2nd, but that gap back to Rich Snape's only half a second as we move towards the end of this 8th lap.
Walters is going to have to make himself as wide as possible, because Snape has been absolutely rapid all race, and he's not going to want to let that podium spot slip away.
"20 seconds to go, and Jody Fannin is under immense pressure. Nigel Walters has narrowed that gap to just 0.6 as they scream toward the flag.
Fannin just needs to park it on the apex and not beat himself now. Walters is close enough to look for a lunge, but Jody's keeping that Cortina dead center on the road.
Jody Fannin takes the checkered flag. He led from pole, and he's done it in some style as we move through that final lap.
He held off Nigel Walters there at the end as well, a real cool head on those shoulders to take the top step of the podium today.
Nigel Walters takes the 2nd step of the podium. A fantastic performance to move up from 3rd on the grid.
He really pushed Fannin all the way there at the end. A half-second gap after all that racing shows just how hard those two were going at it.
Rich Snape completes the podium, from 7th on the grid all the way up to 3rd. An incredible drive from our lead AM class driver.
He's been consistent and brave on the brakes all race. That's a huge result for him against the Pro-Am guys.
Jimmy Lindo holds off David Constable-Berry for 4th, followed home by John Boontakis in 6th, and Tim Weller in 7th as the midfield battle finally settles down.
They were absolutely going for it right up to the line there. A few thousandths between them is basically just a blink of an eye in these cars.
James Allen holds off Dominic Fauvargue for 8th. Chris Stokes in 10th, and Daniel Kosis rounds out the top 11.
They were all grouped together right at the end there. A massive three-way battle for 8th, and it's James Allen who's got the better of them on that final lap.
And crossing the line in 12th is Neil Constable-Berry, with Renee Robertson and Joel Limrich finishing up the final spots in 14th.
They were all having a real go right up to the line there. A few tenths between those three, and the final lap is about as close as it gets in these Cortinas.
The grid is set, and the air is heavy with anticipation as we wait for the signal here at Summit Point.
Just a slight breeze to contend with today, but all these drivers are thinking about right now is surviving the madness of the opening lap.
Constable-Berry has that Cortina MK1 planted on the front row, looking to show the pro class exactly what he's made of. Hungarian flyer Daniel Kosic sits in P3, just waiting for the lights to go green.
That MK1 Cortina is going to be a handful off the line, but if Kosic can get the power down, he's in a prime spot to spoil the party for the front two. Stokes is lurking right behind them in 4th, and as a pro driver, he knows exactly how to exploit any hesitation from the guys on the front row.
James Allen starts from 6th, sitting right on the tail of the leaders and hoping to jump a few of those pro drivers early on.
That 3rd row is all about the launch. If Allen gets a clean getaway, he can tuck into the slipstream and let the Cortina do the work.
Tim Weller rounds out the top 7, the highest placed AM driver in this thicket of Cortinas.
It's a claustrophobic spot to start. Weller needs to be incredibly precise on the brakes, because when the pack bunches up into turn 1, that mid-grid is where things usually get messy.
David Constable-Berry makes it 2 on the grid for the family, starting from 9th in that MK1 Cortina.
He's got a mountain to climb from the 5th row. In these cars, you really have to be decisive when you see a gap, because it'll vanish before you can blink.
Rich Snape starts from 11th, another AM-class runner looking to punch above his weight in that MK1 Cortina.
11th is a tough place to be. You're reacting to everyone else's movements at that point, just trying to find a clear path through the gearbox of the car ahead.
Nigel Walters lines up 12th, looking to pick his way through the pack from the midfield.
Being that far back, you're really looking for a gap to open up. He'll need to stay sharp because it's going to be a funnel once those lights go out.
Renee Robertson has put that MK1 Cortina exactly where he wants it, right at the sharp end of the grid on pole position.
Sitting in P1, your heart is just hammering against your ribs. Robertson knows the target is on his back the second those lights go out.
The lights are out and we are racing. A wall of Lotus Cortina's Thunders toward the first turn.
Robertson holds his nerve and gets that Cortina through the first sequence of corners, still in the lead, just like he drew it up.
Robertson gets a textbook launch and covers the inside line. He's survived the first turn shuffle at the head of the pack.
That's exactly what he needed. In these Cortinas, being the one in clean air is a massive advantage for your tire temps and visibility.
Walters is still in 12th, stuck in the mid-pack as the cars settle into their rhythm.
You don't always need to go for a hero move on the first lap. He's played it safe and kept the car in one piece. That's what counts.
Wait, something's going wrong for Bantakis. He's plummeted from 8th to 12th on the first lap.
He might have missed a shift or got boxed in, but he's got a long afternoon ahead of him now if he wants to get back up into the top 10.
Lindo has inherited 8th after that chaos with Bantakis, but Jody Fannin is absolutely hounding him, just 3/10 back.
Fannin is close enough to see the rivets on Lindo's bumper. When you're that tucked in, you're just waiting for the car ahead to miss a gear or go a fraction too deep into the corner.
There is something about these old Cortina Sky. They look like they are dancing on the edge of a knife through every single corner.
They really are. You have got zero aero to lean on, just mechanical grip and a whole lot of body roll. You have to manhandle them toward the apex, and then just pray the rear stays behind you on exit.
Bantakis found that out the hard way early on. Losing 4 spots in one lap is a massive psychological blow right out of the gate.
It is brutal. You spend all week perfecting your references. Then one small mistake or a car getting sideways in front of you ruins the rhythm. Now he is in that dangerous headspace of trying too hard to claw it back.
I remember you telling me once that overdriving is the fastest way to go slow. Is that what Lindo is doing to keep Fannin at bay?
Lindo looks composed for now, but Fannin is hounding him into defensive lines. Every time Lindo has to protect the inside, he is losing momentum for the following straight. It is a high-speed game of chess.
Fannin is absolutely on a charge now, up to 7th, and staring right down the tailpipes of Nigel Walters. Wait, that gap between Walters and Fannin is down to just 3/10 of a second now. Fannin is really asking questions of Walters here, barely a car length between them through the technical sections.
It is classic touring car stuff. When you are that close, you are getting almost no air into the radiator, and the front end starts to wash out in the dirty air.
9 minutes left on the clock, plus that extra lap. It feels like a sprint, but these drivers have to keep those tires from overheating in this heat.
Exactly. In a short race, you are tempted to dive bomb every corner. But if you cook the rears in these Cortinas, you are just a passenger for the final minutes.
We saw Bantakis drop like a stone earlier. One tiny lapse in concentration, and the mid-pack just swarms you before you can recover.
That is the danger of the slipstream. You lose the car ahead, you lose your toe, and suddenly, you are defenseless on the long run to the line.
Walters is holding firm in 6th for now, but Fannin looks like he has found a rhythm that the guys around him haven't quite matched yet.
Fannin is using a much wider entry to get the car rotated early. It is a bold move because it leaves the door open, but it is giving him much better exit speed.
I remember seeing you take lines like that back in your touring car days, Sky, usually followed by a bit of paint swapping on the exit.
If you are not rubbing, you are not racing. But these MK1s are fragile. You bend a steering arm or a tie rod, and your afternoon is over.
The tension is thick out there. Everyone is waiting for the leader to make a mistake, but Robertson looks remarkably calm at the front.
Being in the lead is a different kind of stress. You are not fighting another driver. You are fighting your own imagination and every little vibration in the wheel.
Fannin's made the move. Up into 6th now, and he's not hanging around. He's only 4/10 off Nigel Walters, tail in 5th. Fannin just put in a 132.010 on that second lap, and he is already asking more questions of Walters in 5th.
He has found some serious pace, but that gap to Nigel Walters has opened up just a tiny bit now. 5/10 is enough for a driver to breathe again.
Hungarian Daniel Kosick is sitting in P4, and he has just 0.5 seconds between him and a podium spot held by Ridge Snape.
Kosick was pushing hard on that third lap. He knows Snape's ahead, and the podium is right there for the taking if he can find another 10th or two.
Snape has responded, and that gap's just opened up another 0.2 of a second on this lap. Weller is flying. He's just gone 1:29.518, his fastest of the race, and is closing right up on Jody Fannin.
That gap is half a second. Weller's found a lot of confidence. In the front end of that Cortina, he's carrying so much more mid-corner speed than Fannin is at the moment.
Wait, that gap between Weller and Fannin is down to 0.8 of a second now.
Fannin had a little wobble in that last section, and Weller's just closed the gap by 0.3. He's within striking distance if he can keep it clean.
Allen's looking right down the throat of Jimmy Lindo for 10th, only 0.3 seconds back.
He's on his fastest lap so far, a 1:31.641. That's pure intent from Allen. He's sniffing that top 10, and Lindo better start covering the inside lines.
Walters is all over the back of Kosick, 0.2 between them as they scream through the fourth lap.
Look at that lap time, a 1:29.309 from Walters. He's found some real magic out there, and Kosick is going to have his mirrors full of that MK1 Cortina.
Kosick has managed to stretch that lead back out to 0.4, giving himself a bit of a buffer over Walters. Jody Fannin is absolutely glued to the back of Nigel Walters now. There's just 0.2 of a second between them. Fannin is like a shadow behind Walters, keeping that gap pinned at 0.2 and just waiting for the slightest mistake. Rich Snape is right in the wheel tracks of Fauvargue. That's just 0.2 between them in the fight for second.
This is where you start taking different lines to disturb the car in front. Snape's last lap was a 1:29 seconds, and 4 milliseconds he's got the pace to force an opening.
Snape's fallen back. He was hounding the back of Fauvargue just a moment ago, but now he's dropped to 4th, and there's a massive 2.5-second canyon between them.
He must have had a massive moment. You don't lose that much time unless you've gone sideways or had a huge lockup. That podium he was eyeing is suddenly looking a long way off.
Snape's gone into freefall. He's plummeted right down to 7th now, nearly 7 seconds behind Fauvargue. Weller's up into 6th, and he's not finished. He's just 0.4 off Jody Fannin in 5th. Weller is absolutely hounding Fannin now. That gap has been slashed in half, down to just 0.2 of a second.
You can see the car dancing around in the mirrors. Weller is making Fannin defend every single apex right now, and that's exactly how you force a mistake.
David Constable Barry is practically pushing John Boontakis for 8th place, just 0.1 of a second between them. Boontakis has just given himself a bit of breathing room over Constable Barry. That gap's out to over half a second now.
In these cars, if you're not in the slipstream, you're a sitting duck. Constable Barry's got to get back on the tail of that Cortina if he wants any chance of a move.
Weller's keeping that gap to Fannin down to 0.3 as he looks to pick up another place into 5th. Weller is absolutely pinned to the back of Fannin here, keeping that 0.3 gap as they charge through lap 6. Fannin still holding on to 5th with Tim Weller practically in his boot, just 0.3 back. Fannin's doing a stellar job of keeping that 0.3 cushion in 5th, despite Weller being all over his mirrors. Rich Snape must be kicking himself. 1 minute you are smelling the podium champagne, the next you are looking at a 7-second deficit down in 7th place.
It is the classic summit point trap. You try to carry just 5 miles per hour more through a corner to force a move, and the rear of that Cortina just says no. He likely caught the grass on the exit, and once these cars start swinging, they are hard to stop.
He has got work to do now, but meanwhile, Jody Fannin and Tim Weller are practically inseparable. That 3/10 gap has stayed static for laps. It is like they are joined by a bungee cord.
Weller is playing the long game there. He is not lunging yet, just staying close enough to ensure Fannin cannot take the ideal line. It is all about mental fatigue, waiting for Fannin to blink first under that constant pressure.
I love watching these MK1s rotate. They look so top-heavy. But the way they pivot on the brakes and then tripod through the corners is just art in motion.
You have to be so delicate with the trail braking. If you are too aggressive on the entry, you will just wash out wide and lose all your momentum for the following straight. It is a balancing act.
Bontakis is also holding off David Constable by the skin of his teeth. That battle for 8th is just as intense as the fight for the top 5.
Bontakis had that rough start, dropping 4 places early on, but he has really found his feet again. Recovering your focus after a bad first lap is one of the hardest things to do when your adrenaline is spiked.
We are getting deep into the session now. The tires must be starting to feel the heat, especially with these cars sliding around as much as they do.
They will be getting greasy for sure. You start feeling the car wander more on the straights, and those braking zones just feel longer and longer as the grip falls away.
Robertson at the front seems to be in a league of his own, though. Total composure from our leader as he manages the gap beautifully.
He has got that car on rails. When you are in that zone, the car feels like an extension of your own limbs. He is just hitting every mark with zero drama.
David Constable is hounding Bontakis for 7th, that gap sitting at 0.8 of a second now.
He's keeping the pressure on. Bontakis will be seeing that MK1 in his mirrors every time he looks, and at 0.8, any small lockup is going to be an invitation.
Wait, Constable Barry's found another 10th. That gap's down to just 7/10 now.
He's really putting the hammer down on lap 8, narrowing the margin to Bontakis, and making a move for 7th look more likely.
Hungarian Daniel Kosic is right in the wheel tracks of Fovarg. That's just 3/10 between them in the fight for 2nd. Renee Robertson is just seconds away from taking the flag. A dominant drive, 4.2 seconds clear of Dominic Fovarg. Renee Robertson takes the win at Summit Point, pole to checkered flag. That's how you control a race from the very first corner. Fovarg crosses in 2nd. What a massive result, especially starting from all the way back in 5th.
He played it perfectly. He avoided the chaos and just picked people off one by one. He really showed his experience out there today.
Hungarian Daniel Kosic takes 3rd, and that final podium spot, he's fought for every single 10th of a second out there today.
He earned that one. The pressure was intense from the very first lap, but Kosic held his nerve and looked after his tires when it really mattered.
Walters, Fannin, Snape, and David Constable Barry all crossed the line now. Positions 4th through 7th sorted out in a final rush for the line. Bontakis, Stokes, Weller, and Lindo round out the top 11. A solid effort from all of them today.
Every single one of those drivers has something to be proud of. They fought hard, and most of all, they made it through a tough day at the track.
Allen and Neil Constable Barry bring up the final 2 positions, crossing 12th and 13th.
It's always hard to finish at the back of the pack, but they stayed in it and fought for every single 10th of a second until the end.